Hello and welcome to my first full-length album review on YouTube. I've written reviews on other platforms like Discogs, and I've talked about albums in other videos before, but this is my first time doing a dedicated review of a single album on YouTube. I toyed with this idea in the past, but I never went through with it. What made me change my mind? Well, YouTube is where most of my audience resides, and with the debut of my album reaction streams last year, I figured it would be a good time to start doing album reviews here too. As you can see from the title, I'll be discussing the latest album from Skrillex, which was released at the very beginning of last month. The album is curiously named Fuck You Skrillex, You Think You're Andy Warhol, But You're Not, or FUS for short. I'll be referring to it as FUS for the rest of this video. Although I've mentioned him on the channel before, Skrillex is not an artist I've detailed my personal thoughts on. Sonny Moore began his music career in 2004 as a vocalist for the band From First to Last. He left the group in 2007 to pursue a solo career. He started using the name Skrillex the following year, and in 2010 he released his first 2 EPs. My Name is Skrillex is a decent debut, but it's his second EP that really put him on the map. I mean it when I say that Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites is a classic. All 6 tracks here are very well produced, creative, and memorable. Each of them has their own identity, yet they fit together as a cohesive project. Now, I was a young child when the EP first dropped, and my initial reaction to it wasn't so positive. I remember my sister liked it, but at the time, I found Skrillex's music in general to be annoying, stupid, and too loud. Of course, this was before I developed a taste for electronic music. My general taste in music at the time didn't consist of much outside of video game soundtracks and a handful of other things. However, after I started getting into electronic music, I returned to Skrillex's pre-2015 material, and I ended up really enjoying it. This led to me purchasing an unofficial greatest hits and remixes compilation on Amazon, since this was before I got a subscription to Spotify. I still feel like that time frame of 2010 to 2014 houses Sonny's best material. Listening to it now in the 2020s, it not only has an added nostalgia factor, but it still has the fun factor that made it appealing in the first place. I really must admire how Sonny produced music this complex and detailed at such a young age. Not to mention, he was a trendsetter with his style of dubstep that would later be referred to as brostep, which I think is a terrible name, but whatever. Now, even though I now became a fan of Skrillex's pre-2015 work, his work from 2015 onwards didn't really interest me at all. For instance, the Jack U album was mostly just annoying. Pretty much everything little kid me thought of Skrillex at the time applies to Jack U. It doesn't even have the benefit of good production. After Jack U, Skrillex mostly stuck to producing for other artists behind the scenes, and making some guest appearances on other artists' tracks. I haven't really explored this era of his music very much. It didn't really grab my attention when I was younger. Notable exceptions are the tracks End of the World, which he did with Mr. Wazzo, and Wasted Times, which he produced for The Weeknd. Eventually, his older music fell out of my rotation, and I forgot about Skrillex for a while. That was until February of 2023, when he released his second album, Quest for Fire. I remember clearly that I opened up Spotify on my phone that day, and I was greeted with a message reading something like, "Listen to the new album from Skrillex." I thought to myself, Skrillex, huh? That's a name I haven't seen in a while. He released a new album? I looked over the tracks, and I saw the stacked list of collaborators including Missy Elliott, Mr. Wazzo, Fortet, Josh Pan, and more. I knew I had to give this album a listen, and upon doing so, I ended up enjoying it. I don't think it's amazing by any means, but it is a solid project consisting of retro garage, house, OG dubstep, and Duke influences. I decided I would start following Skrillex's output more actively after this. He actually released another album a day after Quest for Fire, entitled Don't Get Too Close, but I skipped over it since it's not targeted towards an electronic music audience. Instead, it's an R&B, emo rap, and pop project. Anyway, fast forwarding 2 years, we have Skrillex's 4th album and his final project under Atlantic Records, FUS. This is a unique project for multiple reasons. First off, it received no prior promotion. It was shared via a Dropbox download link to his email subscriber list on March 31st, before suddenly being put on streaming services a day later, on April Fool's Day no less. Second, the presentation and structure of the album is unlike anything he's done before. FUS is made up of a whopping 34 tracks, ranging in length from 30 seconds to just under 3 minutes. When I went into it, I was expecting it to be a deadmau5 Project 56 type of thing, but I was instead greeted with a continuous mix complete with narration from DJ Smokey. I haven't heard of DJ Smokey prior to this, though it turns out he was actually the voice behind this meme.
Holy shit, this some hot garbage, but I can't stop listening.
And when I made that connection, I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. I've heard some people say that they found said narration to be excessive and that it overstayed its welcome. But personally, I mostly don't mind it. I actually quite like the tongue-in-cheek humor, and with a few exceptions, most of the one-liners are amusing. As far as individual tracks go, I won't be going over all of them, since some of them aren't particularly noteworthy, as they serve as build-ups or transitional elements to the surrounding tracks. The opener, Skrillex is Dead, does a good job setting up the thematic tone for the project, and the following track, Spitfire, does this for the sonic tone. Skrillex is Dead is mostly made up of DJ Smokey's narration, and it has some nice acoustic guitars in the beginning. This is Skrillex. Skrillex is dead. Anyway, Spitfire has a fun vocal hook, courtesy of Hawaii Slim, and 2 energetic drops. The first of which is reminiscent of his early 2010 bro step material, albeit through a modern lens. The second drop is more akin to the stuff on his Quest for Fire album. Things I Promised has some cool vocal chops, and also repurposes part of the vocals from his old track Summit. Summit is one of the best tracks he's ever done, so it was cool to hear a snippet from that in a new context. The stretch of tracks from Gulab XX to Animals Beat stand out for being some of the project's quieter and breezier moments. I like the use of female vocals on those tracks. Now, like I said, not all the tracks here stand out to me. Some of them, like Slick Man and Squishy Clip, have very little to offer outside of their super skeletal drops. The good news is that once the track Hold On hits, the album delivers a lot of its best moments. Hold On itself is a fun little burst of energy with its blaring horn stabs. Morja, Kaiju VIP, Redline Dash, and Ultra Intro all have enjoyable drops that playfully skip along. I like the bright synths of Druids, especially the sign synths in the beginning, and Biggie Bap deserves a mention solely because it contains the album's funniest moment by far. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but if you've heard this album, you can probably guess it, and it got me to audibly laugh. D&B Ting, as you can probably guess, has some drum and bass influences, which helps it stand out. The modulated vocals remind me of those from the Raga Twins on his Recess album. The project concludes with Azazu, which is a nice closer. It's a drumless synth-driven piece that carries a warm, heartfelt vibe. There's a narration from DJ Smokey over the whole thing that features a message from Skrillex where he individually thanks all of the album's collaborators and the fans for listening. I won't lie, it did put a smile on my face when I first heard it. Despite the large number of tracks, I was actually able to pick out my 2 favorites pretty quickly. Those 2 favorites are Zeet Noise and Voltage. Zeet Noise, a collaboration with Boys Noise and Dylan Brady of 100 Gex, goes for a fast-paced industrial techno-style sound, and it sounds incredible. The track uses a lot of audio effects like modulating the vocal sample and EQing the main synth line at times. It's just a great moment for this project. It's got a lot of energy and it hits hard. I also like the breakdown with those more airy synths. Now, I said Azazu was the album closer, and while that's true, I think it'd be more accurate to say that Voltage is the real closer, while Azazu is the epilogue. When I looked over the track list, the name alone stuck out to me. This is because I heard about an unreleased Skrillex track from around 2011 or 2012 called Voltage. Earlier versions of this track exist on YouTube, but I'd never listened to them. Now that I've heard the song, I can see why so many people are calling it the album's best moment. The pianos sound gorgeous, the synths are full of color, and the pop hook, courtesy of Sonny himself, is endearing. Not to mention, the drop sounds incredibly nostalgic. Honestly, this is on par with the best moments from Bangarang. It would have fit perfectly on that EP. In summary, FUS is a very solid project. Despite the dumb title, the album is packed with detail and strong moments. The continuous mix is very well done, and I respect how he went for an unconventional presentation like this. I honestly like it better than his previous 2 albums. Is it perfect? No, like I said, there are some tracks that are clearly weaker than the others. And the narration can get a little excessive. For instance, I don't need to hear about how nuke radio makes your eardrums bleed. It's also worth mentioning that the short length of all these tracks is sometimes a double-edged sword. On one hand, the least interesting tracks don't bother me because they are so brief, but I do wish certain tracks were longer. Maybe if we're lucky, he'll drop extended mixes of tracks like Voltage or Spitfire. Still, I'll definitely be hanging on to this album. It's got a lot of replay value, and it's a strong testament to how talented and versatile a producer Sonny is. Though, I obviously don't want to discredit or undermine the numerous artists that helped out with this album. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my review. If this goes over well, I'll definitely make more album reviews on this channel. I already have a few albums in mind I'd like to talk about. Any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Thanks again, guys.